Okay, so what do you think of it? What comes to mind when you hear the word plastic?
I guess that, like, everything's made of it?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Not only that, you know, when I was young, there was this weird thing that the adults looked at things that were made of plastic as immediately being things that were of no value or that are a cheap replacement for something else. That's not a real plate. That's a plastic plate. It's not a real fork. It's a plastic fork, you know? My generation of kids, everything we wanted was plastic. G.I. Joe was plastic. Every single toy was plastic. There were plastic parts to every Parker Brothers game that we bought. You know, everything that you desired in one way or another was made of plastic. And in this day and age, it's almost silly because everything is made of plastic now. Parts of our cars are made of plastic, you know, a very expensive plastic and glass phones and all this stuff, right? So, you know, for me, it just sort of represented all the stuff that I ever liked as a kid or wanted was all made of plastic. And the word has positive connotations in the sense that something that's plastic is flexible. You know, it's adaptable. It can be used for lots of purposes. So that's where I was coming from. I don't think I have what's called a neurotypical, you know, outlook on life. So how did you come to be doing what you're doing here?
I don't like questions.
I don't like that. Oh, I see how that goes, you know?
You can give, but you can't take.
I stopped doing something else and needed something to fill my time. I tried this and was like, this is fun. I should put more effort into this. And then I put more effort into it.
That's how a lot of things
And then
start.
we were here.
You know, you're bored and you start doing things.
And you're like, I like this.
Yeah.
There's something here.
I got into game design first by making anime music videos when I was a kid.
Isn't that how everybody gets into making video games?
No, like it's kind of weird. At some point, me and my friends wanted to make our own videos, you know, but we still wanted it to be animated and all that other stuff, and wanted to create a story through them. And I've grew up with video games. And it just kind of, it's a weird evolution, but I was like, well, why don't I just like make my own stories or make my own interactive game? It just that's how it kind of started.
So what music videos did you make?
Oh God, it's been so long. I did an Akira one. I forget the song that I used because it's been so freaking long, and they are lost to hard drives long ago and computers long ago. A buddy of mine, you know, went from there to, you know, trying to do actual like filmmaking, and still working on that as I'm still working on this. You know?
Yeah, but you got Bit Shifter.
Yeah.
You got the bitch.
Yeah.
So this
Not sure if that's a good marketing campaign.
Right. I saw you. You know, it's the game with the bitch inside. No. Do you notice something different about this map?
There's no path things for it to go on.
Correct. And so you notice that the virus touched down on the river anyway, right? And so this is kind of an old schooling map where before we invented the Zorpaths,
wow.
This is how the virus worked. It would lick out across the ground.
I just got oh my god.
When I started the game, when I came to the team, there weren't the Zorpaths. The virus spread on the ground like you see here.
What was the purpose of the bugs in a general sense?
You
use them to buy things from makers, but it costs like 10, and I have 458.
Yep, and you can have a whole bunch, so it's very easy. You're not really running out.
Yeah, 458, yeah. Yep. Well, we're still, honestly, I think when it comes to the design part, we're still kind of figuring out, you know, how many it does cost to do something. Hence, you know, that's also why we're still in early access. Because we don't know how much it's going to actually cost you to do it and how many coins people collect. And that's the type of data we're actually still kind of looking for. So we have it low kind of for one of those reasons. The coins originally were designed like to be something else to do while you're still cleaning up the virus.
That's what it was for like the first level or two.
Yeah,
it was just something else to do.
And then further on in the development, we decided, you know, we wanted to give the player more choice and more, you know, design aspects to it to where they can decide what they want for a weapon and what they want to select here, instead of us just saying, okay, you get this, this, and this. We want you to be able, okay, we're going to give you this, and then you have some choices to make. And that's where the coins then came back into, where, you know, you use the coins to purchase your choices. So that's the general purpose, which is what you asked. But there's also a more sort of subtle, insidious purpose, right?
not really. Which is that, a path of coins leading somewhere might lead you to expect that it's worth going where they lead. So we also use it to direct the player to places that of interest. Notice that the gold coins are a little bit hidden. You got to search for them.
Yeah.
So by following the silver coins, it often brings the gold coins into view. You'll see it behind that crystal or behind that tree. Oh, there it is, And also to just also take you to some part of the map where if you weren't paying attention, you did it too close, you might not realize, hey, there's another maker over here. And you may not see it, so a bunch of coins across the map. So there's also that, a little bit of game design magic, right? To just sort of lead your expectations. Little sprinkle dust there.
Yeah, and that goes back to the whole teaching the player without teaching the player. Having to...
without saying, "Hey, stop.
Yeah.
Look, sit here. Look at this." Okay.
Going way back to your little Zelda reference earlier, we don't want a Navi. We don't want that. Hey, listen, we don't want to pause the game. I love
that game so much. Navi is awful.
Oh, yeah, I hated Navi. I wish that, I kind of want to play a ROM hack of it to where Navi just speeds through it.
Was never a fan of, hey, listen. Here's a tip.
That's honestly how our first tutorial was you'd fly 5 feet. It would say, hey, this is virus over here. You need to clean it with your gun. And you're reading all this.
Also, those are the worst things to do videos on.
Yes.
Here, let's watch me do a tutorial.
If the tutorial is going to be embedded, that it needs to be entertaining, right? And so, this is obviously a technique that's been around in game development for a long, long time. But when it was explained to me back when I was, wet behind the ears, which is, yesterday, basically. But, back when it was described to me, it was called, the Half-Life method. Have your tutorial be the way Half-Life does. Here's this suit. Oh, we need to instruct you on how to use the suit. And until that gives a context for why you're being told what to do. And then, until you do it, you can't get to the next part, but it's natural, right? You're rewarded for doing the right things rather than, bored. And, it's actually something that I noticed in passing, over the years of thinking about all this stuff, that there's something funny about that where if you do a good job of making that type of tutorial that hides itself as a tutorial, where, it's a tutorial, but it teaches you as you go and you maintain that kind of pacing and interest and all that stuff. Another funny consequence is the game becomes more interesting to watch people play. The parts of the game where you just apply what you know are more fun for the person playing it and less so for the person watching. But if you're watching someone learn how to play, it's often embedded in a story. And so there's a narrative and it's more interesting intrinsically. And it's more interesting because you sort of can see the context,
So, guys, I have to go a little bit, but how did you come up with the character Flash BIOS? Because he is amazing.
When we were first making this game, when we were saying, okay, it's inside a computer and you're cleaning up a virus and stuff, we realized that, all we had was a ship. And so you didn't really get to see who's doing all this stuff. And so we started to say, well, who's flying the ship and who's behind all this? And so, we thought, Flash, it just sounded like a hero's name, right? And it didn't take itself too seriously.
Flash BIOS is one of the greatest names ever, period. I love it so much.
It's awesome. I mean, it's awesome. The rest of the characters have some pretty good names as well, right?
Yeah.
You've seen General Protection, right? He's obviously in charge of things and not doing super great. He's like me, I guess. Yeah. Now got a villain called Major Malfunction, who's got kind of a split personality. He's the raging, I'll get you, Flash, right? And meanwhile, he's got this wire, and when it shorts out, he becomes numbnuts. And so we've got that schizophrenic villain coming. When you finish this level, you'll meet Asterisk, who is... it's like
just
she's like a
on that one. Really, Asterisk.
I know, Aster, right? So Aster... Yeah, she's called a mechanic, but in my mind, that's sort of what a programmer would be called in this world, right? Because everything's kind of mechanical, right? All this electronics is more hands-on and banging metal and stuff. So yeah, we definitely got some fun characters, and all that is definitely borrowing from all.
Pop that mega cleaner bomb to your right there, in that big huge splot.
Here.
Yeah, pop it there.
Yo.
Damn. There you go. All these characters are definitely heavily ripped off of Reboot and other just robots that we like, right?
Oh, I have one more question. What are these things, and what do they say?
These things are awesome.
I tried to read a few, and I just got confused.
This was your brainchild, Jim, right? I mean,
this was my brainchild, yeah.
Okay, so let me give you the context is, so we're trying to go for stuff to increase the visual interest and sell the idea that you're inside a computer, right? And something that would be applicable on lots of different levels. So not something like the system command building only makes sense at system command, right? So it's like a one-off. And so we were looking for something to add into our world that would add some visual interest, but also be something that's, there's a weird paradox here where when you're moving through space in 3D, how fast you feel like you're moving is affected by how close things are whizzing by you.
Huh.
So you know that when you're in a small car on the highway, you feel like you're moving, you know, even when you're just going 40, it's like, because the ground is like right outside the window and flying by. When you're in like a minivan or a truck or something, even when you're going fast, it doesn't quite feel that way because you're farther away from the ground. There's the same effect here where if we had a map that was wide open, you really would feel like you're crawling, even when you're going normal speed. So we had to always make sure that there was buildings or trees or something to go past you at a certain speed, if that makes sense. Have something that went up in the air to provide another context without putting trees and buildings everywhere. And so this was Jim's brainchild as to how we solved those design problems.
Yeah, it was kind of the idea of, well, you're in a computer world and the user, for instance, or information is being transmitted. So that's basically like, they're called comm nodes in the, if you were to edit a level, it's a comm node. It's a communication node to the user. That's the idea. So when it gets infected, it starts throwing virus stuff, spam, email. There's stuff.
Okay.
There's even some Weird Al Yankovic. There's a couple of Weird Al Yankovic lines in there, like virus alert and major cheese or something like that. When it's infected, when it's not infected, it's sending things like SFC scan to scan your Windows system. It's running, go to run this playlist, do this thing. It's all like code that a user would be inputting into the computer to have something happen. In your first video, when you're doing all that gibberish in the beginning, those are actually two languages that are one of our former 2D designers created, where each character responds to an English letter. So what you read in English is actually in that language. And if you see that language anywhere else, which actually is also in the circuitry, some of the circuitry
you had the magic decoder ring, you would know what it says. So yeah, there's a lot of details in here that are all just, they're purely for fun, and we do, we've not nearly gone over all of them, and we do hope that people who play the game, discover these things, right? Figure them out.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, it's been incredibly revealing to me, definitely on one aspect, making games and stuff and getting involved in the nitty-gritty of it. It's definitely taught me how certain things could come about that used to baffle me, I'd be playing this, whatever, like, Turn to Castle Wolfenstein, and you're in this, fighting your way up the mountain, there's this big tram, and this big electric generator, and this is all this detail, it's amazing. But you get in the tram and you look to the left, and this texture has this huge seam on it, just this big-ass rip. And I used to think, how could they do that? How could they make a game that's so freaking awesome in all these ways and not see this rip in the texture? You know what I mean? And now I realize, they saw it. It was just item 1,257, and they cut off at 1,200 and said everything else is just going to ship. When I was a modder for Quake and stuff, I'd look and I'd be like, how come the names for all these files make no fucking sense? And how come where they live in folders makes no sense whatsoever? Now I know. All right, yeah, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Great talking to you guys, too. BitShifter is on Steam right now in early access.
Yep.
Okay, and when do you think it'll be released?
About a year.
About a year?
Yeah, it might be a little less, or I guess it kind of depends on,
Funding.
Yeah, that's right.
Funding has a lot to do with it.
Depends on, how motivated we can be and, how well our sales do in early access to help fund some of this. So.
Sounds good. Well, this has been Paul and Jim for BitShifter. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thanks for having us.